presentation first, and then there's going to be a question and answer session at the end. So you can have any questions, and I hope I can answer them. So basically, I'm going to talk about how the market has developed in 2008, what happened in 2009, and of course, what everybody's asking is what's going to happen in 2010 and going forward. So again, just to walk you through the agenda of the presentation, in 2009 we've seen the netbook market momentum and really the explosion being confirmed, so we're going to talk about that in terms of numbers. We've particularly seen this momentum and explosion in EMEA, so we are going to look at why that has happened, particularly in Western Europe. Look at some of the drivers, including the competitive environment, look at some of the product trends, particularly operating system, how the telco channel has emerged in 2008 and 9, and then finally we're going to look at the forecast assumptions for the netbook market, and of course all the relating product categories, how CULV or Neo type products or smart books are going to impact the netbook market. So as I've mentioned, 2009 has really seen a major expansion in the netbook market. These figures represent worldwide numbers. So in 2008, this market really came out of nowhere. We've seen over 11 million units shipped worldwide, and we see these numbers triple in 2009. So we expect over 30 million units, which cumulatively it's about close to 50 million units worldwide. So as you can see, the growth and the uptake has been tremendous. Now, as you can see, EMEA represents about 40% in 2009. Of course, in the beginning, that this number has been even higher, 60–70%, purely because the uptake really happened first in Western Europe. But then since the end of last year, also Latin America, United States, and Asia Pacific has been catching up in terms of demand. So that's why naturally the share of EMEA has fallen slightly. But as you can see, that still the majority of the shipments is going into the European market. Looking into the sub-regions within the EMEA market, we are tracking, of course, Western Europe and the emerging markets of Central Eastern Europe and Middle East and Africa. Now, as you can see, the overwhelming majority of the products is really destined to Western Europe. This is where this product category has really made the biggest impact. Of course, as we talked about this last year, originally this product category has been intended to be a primary device for emerging markets, and of course the market has very quickly shifted to become a secondary device for the mature market, and basically the numbers continue to confirm this. Again, Western Europe represents something about 80% of netbook shipments overall. And we've heard some numbers today that it's about 20% of portables. Well, it's actually 25%. So 1/4 of total portables is a netbook. But if you just dig into the consumer market, it's actually 1/3. So depending on country, somewhere it may be only 25%, but in other countries 35 or 40%. So the share of netbooks within the total portable market is incredibly high, and again, they really have come out of nowhere and reached this level in less than 2 years. Why has EMEA developed so quickly? Of course, these products, as we talked about this last year, have been the first and affordable ultra portables in the retail channel. People could not get, ultra portable models before in the retail channel. So these were really the first ultra portable models with actually attractive design and ease of use. So it wasn't only the fact that they were affordable, but the internet-centric usage model has really resonated quite well with consumers. But of course, there were some really specific elements to EMEA, and one of these specific elements is definitely the vendor competition and the competitive environment in Western Europe versus, for example, the US. So this market, as we are going to talk about it, is really dominated by Acer and Asus, two players who are actually not that strong yet in the United States, for example. So the fact that these two vendors have been pushing so strongly in the netbook market has really contributed to the strong growth that we've seen in EMEA versus other regions. This huge growth from Acer and Asus also evoked a response in international vendors. So we've seen at the end of last year, HP, Dell, Toshiba, Lenovo, even Sony come to the market with netbooks. So we've seen a huge explosion of product offering, and particularly in last year in the back to school and Christmas seasons, we've seen a plethora of different product designs, different offerings come to the market. In addition to this vendor push and explosion of product offerings, we've also seen an expansion of the available routes to market. So this has been again a key differentiator of trends versus the US, where the telco channel is actually not as important, is not as strong, or the operators are actually not as strong as in the European market. And the fact that they really embraced the netbook product and started offering subsidized model, so bundled with an internet subscription. This has actually contributed to increasing growth in this market. And basically, put this all together, when you have very fierce competition, you have lots of competing products, and you've got lots of competing channels as well. It's really all adds to the pricing pressure. So we've seen products selling for less than £200 or 250 euros. But of course, with the subsidized model, these products actually became available for free if bundled with a 2-year mobile broadband contract. So this value proposition, along with the affordable price, has been really attractive to consumers, and certainly contributing to the huge momentum that we've been seeing in Europe. Last year, if I had shown you the picture of vendor competition, it would have looked so much different, because of course Asus was the first vendor to come out with this concept and really took the market by storm. So last year, the overwhelming majority of products were shipped basically by Asus. Of course, Acer, who is not a great innovator, but does manage to spot market opportunities and move in quickly. They've moved in, and basically ever since Q308 last year, have overtaken Asus with regards to unit shipments of netbooks. Now this situation shows a year-to-date picture, so it's a combined result of the past 2 years. As you can see, Acer has overtaken Asus, and the two top guys represent about 50% of all the shipments that have happened up to now. Last year, we've also talked about how this market will potentially be disruptive with regards to the competitive environment, and we have predicted that telco vendors who have a strong relationship and strong presence in the handset market, and Samsung in particular, will going to make a difference in this market and will emerge as one of the winners. And that's definitely the case, as again, based on year-to-date shipment data, Samsung has emerged as the number 3 player in this market. And ahead of those guys like HP and Dell, who are obviously huge PC manufacturers, and they have very strong foot in the PC market, nevertheless, most A brands have adopted a really cautious attitude towards netbooks, because of course it's not a hugely profitable product where the margins are incredibly thin, and they obviously also didn't want to cannibalize their standard notebook business. So So they've been very cautious in terms of pushing in this market. Of course, they could not fully stay away from it. So they have all come to market with various products. So we've seen HP, Dell, Toshiba, Lenovo, and again, as I mentioned, even Sony joined the pack to launch netbook models. But again, up till now, they've actually been sort of pushing very moderately. Of course, that might change next year. Again, the netbook market remains actually very volatile, and sometimes depending on large retail deals, large telco deals, or even large education deals, the ranking of vendors can easily change. And we know, for example, from HP's sort of strategic direction for 2010 is to definitely push more strongly in the netbook market and regain some of the share that they've lost in 2009 in particular. With regards to the product evolution, last year I've shown you a slide where the market really offered a wide range of products, really ranging from 7 to 8.9 and 10-inch. Even at the time people started announcing 12-inch models, we've seen a huge range of offerings with different RAM sizes, different SSD and HDD hard disk offerings. At the time, also we had different processors. They were more similar in the market. Other vendors have been also experimenting with non-x86 processors, and of course we had a higher share of Linux as well. Basically, all that changed as the market very quickly shifted to a sort of what we call a sweet spot specification. So, this actually was one of the key elements in Samsung's success, because they went for that specification set from the beginning, and that turned out to be the sort of the winning specification in the market. And that is basically comprising of a 10-inch screen, Atom processor, a Windows operating system, approximately 1 gig RAM and 160 gigabyte hard drive. So this is the sort of best-selling mainstream specification out there in the market. Of course, demand has converged towards the specification set. However, this poses a dilemma and a challenge for vendors in terms of, how am I going to, differentiate my product from the other 25 products on the shelf? And of course, we've basically seen lots of different, designs in terms of, different colors. So to add a bit more personalization, we've seen, again, announcements first of 12-inch models, which actually didn't quite work out. Now we are seeing some 11.6, but even that is, I think, it's going to be a hard sell, particularly with the 11.6-inch COLDs. So we still believe that the market will probably maintain this sort of ideal 10-inch size. However, there's going to be probably much more interesting developments with regards to operating systems. Of course, in 2008, it was really started out with Linux. Then, of course, Microsoft jumped on the opportunity and reintroduced the XP Home operating system, which has been very successful. Now, they are also gaining momentum from the Windows 7 launch. So, one of you mentioned how, if you look at the Linux market share, it's indeed actually quite small when you look at the Western world, particularly Western Europe. But Linux remains actually still quite popular in Latin America or Asia Pacific. So in Western Europe, people have been using computers for many years. Most people are down to the third or fourth computer that they are using. They've been using computers at work. So that's a good 10-15 years of using Windows operating systems. So the fact that they are so familiar is the key reason why Microsoft has been so successful in this market. Many OEMs and channel players really claim the high return rates on Linux systems, but it's nothing to do with the fact that there is anything wrong with the machine or even anything wrong with Linux as such. It's purely about people not being familiar with with Linux and how to really use it. But there's going to be a lot of interest in development going forward in 2010 and then 2011. Of course, one of them is the Google operating system, which is probably going to hit the market towards the end of next year, somewhere in the second half. The thing is, it's at this point, it's really hard to talk about the impact it's going to make on the market, because these specifications as to how the operating system will really look like and how it will work is at the moment still unknown. But what's obviously Google is trying to do is to, for example, offer instant on, so much faster boot up times. Hardware support across x86 and ARM as well. So we definitely see Google as a contender, also because they're actually from a size perspective and a weight perspective, they are actually up in the same rank as Microsoft. So they are a company who can take on Microsoft from a marketing and financing standpoint, and deploy the same kind of push and efforts as Microsoft can. Also, many people reckon that Google can also represent the next stage in terms of the shift towards cloud computing. But of course, probably is going. I could talk much more about this probably in a year's time when we know more about how this operating system is going to pan out. And of course, there's Linux, as we talked about. They started out with the first generation of EPC, but then quickly lost ground across EMEA. Now there's a new mobile Linux, Moblin, which has been developed with Intel around the Atom processor. And again, it has very similar objectives, or in terms of minimizing the boot time, trying to offer instant on, and of course reduce power consumption. So basically, as it looks like, a lot of the vendors have realized these elements as key pain points for consumers. So all the operating systems are going to be focusing on offering this functionality. So again, there's going to be a bigger choice of operating systems. However, everybody's will try to offer the same advantages. So I think it's going to be a challenge going forward as to how you guys differentiate from one operating system from another, and which points will be emphasized as key differentiators versus the other 4 or 5 emerging operating systems. But again, one of the important things is particularly if you want to go after volume is OEM support, and certainly good news is that if 50% of your market is or Nessus is already supporting this, then then there's definitely a much better chance of capturing market. And this is still early stages, so the more people get on board and the more support this new Linux distribution gets, the more chance it will have to actually gain in popularity and regain market share versus Microsoft also in Western Europe. As I mentioned, one of the key drivers, particularly in Western Europe, has been the emergence of the TACO channel. Again, as you can see, the TACO channel has really emerged parallel with the netbook market. So the two markets have really developed together. Of course, the retail is still the key route to market for netbooks as well. So it's representing still half of the sales. But considering again that the TACO channel has grown out of nowhere, the fact that it represents about 20% of netbook shipments is actually quite an achievement in such a short period of time. Nevertheless, the emergence of the TACO channel and the TACO market as a route to market hasn't actually been without challenges. So far, so as I mentioned, 3 million units have been sold so far through the tackle channel. So I definitely see this as a key and new route to market. However, it has been for some operators have been very painful. So in 2008, all of a sudden they jumped on this opportunity without really understanding, who to work with or how the PC market worked, how to forecast demand levels, which actually turned out to be incredibly painful for several operators. What really happened is that they didn't know how to plan, how to forecast. And basically they overstocked at the end of 2008. And we've seen this across many large countries, UK, France, Italy, that many operators were actually stuck with inventory. In fact, with so much inventory that in the UK, the Christmas stock from last year has just been sold out in September. So ASUS has been carrying 9 months of stock and had to finance that. And it's basically a shared challenge, of course, with the operators. So in 2009, although the expansion continued, operators have pulled the brake a little bit because they really realized that they had to better understand this market. They really had to plan much better. So basically, 2009 is what we call the learning curve of the telco channel and of the operators. So in 2010, now that they have 1.5 years of experience behind them, many of them are actually more comfortable, more confident in terms of their ability to minimize inventory and financial risk that are the key challenges for telco operators today. But on top of that, they cannot rest. They will continue to optimize and adjust the business model, because right now the situation is that they have invested a lot of money in these subsidies. These subsidies will yield a return in about 2 years' time. So they are still actually very nervous as to whether this business model is profitable or not on the long term. So they will have to be vigilant and make adjustments if necessary, to make sure that this business model is actually viable on the long term. Of course, one of the movements that's going to happen also in the tackle channel is that whilst they are still mostly focused on netbooks at the moment, they will try to move towards a fuller offering in terms of offering notebooks, offering the new CULV or Neo-type thin-line devices, and of course also potentially smart books as well. Looking into the future, IDC is forecasting out to 5 years, up to 2013, and we basically see continued growth in the netbook market across the world. If you look at the 5-year average growth rate, it's about 36%. So we continue to see that the market will continue to expand going forward. Of course, in most of the countries and regions, this is going to lead to an increasing portable PC penetration. Of course, in many markets, this is purchased as an additional device. Of course, we're also seeing a lot of demand from schools. So the installed base is definitely increasing, whether it's in the consumer or the education market. But still, one of the key markets will certainly remain Western Europe, and within Western Europe, the consumer market will remain actually very buoyant. People can access these products actually, for even for free, and we do expect continued vendor push, continued channel push, continued pricing pressure. So consumers will definitely benefit from quite low prices. And of course, what's going to happen increasingly, and not only in Western Europe but then in other regions as well, is that now basically many people have multiple computers in the home, but what netbooks have really done for the market is really change gears and move from multiple computers in the home to multiple computers per person, and netbooks and other ultra portable devices will actually continue to fuel this trend that people will have multiple devices in the home. If we look at the whole portable PC market, of course we differentiate between notebooks. So for us, that is machines with 13-inch or higher screen size. We've got the netbook market, and we've got the traditional ultra-portable market, so that's 12-inch and below. As you can see, the notebook market will actually continue to grow going forward. And of course, this is actually mostly driven by renewals. By now, most people, particularly in Western Europe, already have a notebook, so it's very hard to actually increase the installed base. But we see renewals being the key driver of notebook growth going forward. You can see that dip in 2009. That's basically related to the economic crisis when people basically decided to hold off the renewal of the main machine in the home. So that's why we have seen a drop in standard notebook shipments. But going forward, we definitely believe that people continue to use again either a desktop or a notebook to basically store all their media, pictures, music or films, because the notebooks will retain a very unique usage model and value proposition compared to netbooks or ultra portables. But it doesn't mean that netbooks will go away. We don't think it's a fate. As I mentioned, netbooks will continue to grow, and they will continue to grow parallel to notebooks. Again, as we've talked about it last year, many vendors have feared that the two markets are actually cannibalizing each other. We actually don't see that, and our projection is that the two markets are going to grow parallel. Again, this is really supporting the idea that people are going to be using multiple machines. There is nothing wrong with having a notebook and a netbook at the same time. I think many of us do, and that's going to be increasingly the trend going forward. Of course, one of the new elements in here is really ultra portables, which so far have been a niche market, and the primary reason for that was really price. So if you have to pay 1,500 euros for an ultra portable versus 500 euros for a standard notebook, of course there's a very strong opposition to that, particularly from consumers, but of course also from businesses. So far ultra portables enjoyed only a small uptake, and that was also particularly in the business space. However, with the new sort of thin and light category emerging, and CULV and Neo processors, which will also go into 12-inch and 11-inch products, that is actually likely to change, and ultra portables, again, because coming from a small base, they will actually show quite strong growth going forward. So as I mentioned, we do believe that because people have had experience with computers for many years, they basically their requirements have become more sophisticated, and the usage scenarios or the usage models that people use computers has actually become very sophisticated. So at the moment, there are multiple of different usage scenarios coexisting, which will actually help multiple product categories to coexist. As I mentioned, the CULV and Neo is expected to drive a new category of ultra portables. However, you might say, well, we don't see the numbers yet. Well, it's actually true, but I do believe that the reason why we don't see uptake for the CULV or even Neo processors is not because it's single core or dual core. But it's really because we do believe that it's actually not targeted at the right market.